Welcome to Styleforum Sessions, a new podcast about men's style and clothing from the Styleforum.net community. I'm Ava Kuhle, the owner of Epaulet Menswear, and your host. Joining me is Jacob Hurwitz, the founder and owner of American Trench. He's also our newest affiliate member in the Styleforum.net community. And we're going to spend some time talking about his business, his journey, and his point of view on menswear today. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
Great to be here.
Good to have you. So, how's everything going over there?
Good. It's a beautiful sunny day in Philadelphia. It's always sunny in Philadelphia.
Well, let's start. If you could please tell us just a bit about American Trench, as if we're totally new to your brand and seeing it for the first time. So just kind of in short, what are you guys all about?
Okay. American Trench is a outerwear, apparel, and accessories brand with production in the United States. I would say that we're making casual to sort of business casual clothes for people from the age range of, say, I don't know, 22 to 45. Obviously, people both younger and older than that buy our clothes, but that's kind of the general audience, which is to say, like an adult male. But we have female customers, and we're starting to add, more women's clothing, which is fun. But that's our general focus, and the brand was started for to support U.S. manufacturing and to make a raincoat. So all the manufacturing is done in the United States for every item. That's not to necessarily say all the materials. Materials some of them come from the U.S., but some of them come from all over the world.
Right. But you're cutting, sewing, construction, all that stuff.
Cutting, sewing, knitting. Yeah, like some kind of end state manufacturing of taking materials and putting them together is done at factories in the U.S. In a whole bunch of different places. We do make stuff in our own hometown of Philadelphia, but we also make stuff in your hometown of Los Angeles. We sell and make a lot of socks. Those are all made in North Carolina. We make stuff in Texas, in New England, kind of all over. The Mid-Atlantic, the South, New England, the West Coast. I mean, certainly there's a couple states where we're not. We just bought footwear from Hawaii, so we got Hawaii covered.
So yeah, so you're even reaching out there, and I know it's I do a lot of American production myself. So yeah, you got to go to different regions for different things. The country is kind of specialized that way, and
there are certain hubs.
You got to hop around a lot.
There's definitely hubs or clusters.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, I prepared about 9 questions, just to get some background on your business and what you do. And then I think, a wonderful thing about the Styleforum community is that the members are always really interested in kind of the nuts and bolts, your origin story, the business aspect, how you manage things, how you run things, how you're looking to grow in the future. So we're going to ask about a lot of those things as well. So how about we get started? Could you tell us just a quick overview of how the company began and what got you into this to this crazy business?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my first work experience coming out of college. I was a high school math teacher for 5 years. And
wow.
I was a math major and an art minor, and that's kind of, so I definitely like creative things, but I also like, analytic investigations. And so I taught high school math and I loved it and I was good at it. But I really wanted to join the business world as well. So I left there and I went to work at an, uh, a utility, an electric utility, although it was actually it was called Exelon Corporation, or is called Exelon Corporation, and they owned power plants and electric utilities. I think since
Hmm.
then stuff has been spun off, but
Right.
I was at the office that was like selling and trading like commodities and commodity derivatives. So like selling electricity futures and math modeling, all that kind of crazy stuff. Very like high finance. Uh, and then 2008 happened, and you know everything kind of like came apart, and it was heartbreaking. And to watch sort of the loss of jobs and opportunity, and I think at this seeing all of that happen and at the same time feeling like I was just sort of moving electrons around and I wanted to do something more real, I kind of got it in my head of like wanting to make something, wanting to support the American labor force in a way that wasn't necessarily related to, at the time, building homes, which suddenly no one was doing,
Hmm.
um, and to support manufacturing, which seemed very real to me, and not like shadow finance. So that was kind of the start of it, and I really do believe very very personally in, as does my co-founder David, um, who in the uh, in American labor, and being able to make things ourselves, and the history of American craft and innovation.
Hmm.
And when I say the word American, I don't mean like I only care about, this isn't an America first company.
Right.
Um, like I think that this idea of making stuff, that things can be made in your own country, is pretty common now, and it doesn't have like jingoistic rhetoric. Like I don't
Hmm.
think the French brand Le Bon Factor, is saying, make it in France or die. Like
No, I
I
mean, well, yeah, France has a big legacy of protecting a lot of their kind of cultural and domestic institutions.
I think it's
Um,
the same spirit, like I
yeah.
don't I don't feel like it's not exclusionary. It's just saying like it would be good if we could make some things in our own country. Um, and
So
I feel
just so in terms of you starting, so you and David, so you you've got these two interesting jobs, and you're living in Texas, teaching high school math, and then going into a finance company doing modeling.
I,
Get it
I
in
was
your
in
idea. You want to do something real and work with manufacturing, create consumer products, do it domestically.
Yeah,
Um,
I was in Texas for 2 years, and then I moved back to Philadelphia.
mhm.
Um, and then I started working at Exelon Corporation. And in 2009, I went on vacation that summer, and we went to London and Greece. And
Right.
when I was in London, I bought a trench coat there because, when in Rome.
You need to, yeah. I get that.
Yeah, I was at Piccadilly Circus. We had gone to Fortnum and Mason, and I bought a whole bunch of tea at Fortnum and Mason. Like I bought enough tea to like get in trouble with customs. Like they think I was some kind of weird smuggler.
That's
And we
great.
went across the street to this old building called the Burlington Arcade, which is like sort of like the weird precursor to the mall.
Hmm.
And there were these stalls, and like there's this one stall where some dude's been selling like, you know, pocket squares for 200 years and has like a royal warrant. And, then there was like an empty stall, and there was some guy selling aquascutum trench coats out of like cardboard boxes for
Seems
40.
legit.
Yeah, for 40 quid. So I bought a
Wow.
I bought an aquascutum, a cream colored aquascutum trench coat for 40 quid. I came back to Philly, and my office mates destroyed me when I wore my aquascutum trench to work.
Did they call
They
you?
made
Did they call you Inspector Gadget or something?
Oh, and my boss's boss called me Inspector Gadget, uh, and my coworkers just mercilessly slayed me. Now they couldn't dress at all, so I thought it was
Right.
hilarious. Like, well, that's the pot calling the kettle black, but
Hmm.
whatever. Um,
They were just jealous. Jealous ones still envy.
uh, so I said to my future business partner David, like, well, who makes these trench coats in the United States? And we did some research, and it was like no one. So it was like, all right, well, we're going to make a trench coat in the United States. And the last like sort of major American rainwear brand was London Fog, which was started in Baltimore in like the 50s or something,
Hmm.
or maybe even earlier, maybe the 40s. And London Fog had essentially gone out of business in the 90s. And so, it was that period of hashtag menswear. That's when you were starting Epaulet. So you remember that time period.
Yep.
Like, you know, a trench coat was like a big deal, like along with Alden's and other like kind of heritagey things to wear.
Yeah, I think that was a special moment because it kind of like immediately after that 2008 recession. That was when I think a lot of new customers came into the menswear tent because a lot of the brands, us included, and I think you, were like kind of selling things with a very practical and logical sales strategy. Just talking about investment pieces. And even at the time, Alden's are always a great example. Alden's would be more expensive than like I don't know a Florsheim shoe or something like that. I remember back in 2009, we were retailing like the Shell Cordovan long wings for I think about 575, something like that. So a significant amount of money, but compared to a pair of Gucci sneakers, or some kind of more like European branded shoe that you would see at a Neiman Marcus or a Saks Fifth Avenue. Alden's were this enormous value proposition. Like, yeah, it's expensive, but it's a timeless style. It's something that you can wear and own for a decade. You can resole. Barber jackets kind of had that moment. High quality like selvage jeans, Gitman Brothers Oxfords, and I think also, yeah, your trench coat being this artisanal American made item that's built to last, but also done in a transparent way.
I
Yeah, I can
definitely
see how
think
that was a good concept.
I definitely think the hashtag menswear moment is what pushed us to go to make one of these heritage pieces.
Hmm.
Certainly for our first product to be like pretty high price point.
What was the
Um,
price on it?
I think the price, our original Kickstarter launch price was 725.
Hmm.
And it's creeped up a little bit over the years, but not a whole lot. Just kind of accounting for material and labor changes, and this is like pre-COVID, so I'm not even talking about like current inflationary forces.
And
Uh,
I think so many people out there are always interested, like in the process, because in their minds they have ideas for products. They're like, oh, it'd be amazing to make my own boot. It'd be so great to make my own jacket. With you and David having this idea based on your potentially bootleg aqua scutum coat. Um, how did you go from this idea of let's make a trench coat in the United States like to the reality? Like, where did you start?
I mean, that was like weird and wild because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We had
Hmm.
no idea. We went around to a bunch of different local tailors, and we found a master tailor right in our backyard in Wynwood, Pennsylvania. We're in the suburbs of Philly, and him and his partner, his business partner, they were willing to take on the project of making the sort of the alpha pattern, and walking us through the process of designing this thing. And we had a bunch of ideas. We had sketches, we had sort of example garments, and basically we took some of our own ideas and some sketches, um, and kind of smashed them all together to make this sort of original prototype. And we had an idea about the styling. Like, we didn't
Hmm.
want to make a double-breasted piece. Like, we wanted it to be a single-breasted, more of a Mac style.
Yeah.
But we wanted a hood. and we wanted the hood to come off and be detachable and be like so you could fold it up and keep it in the pocket. Um, the funny thing about that is like my 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 partner David never wears his hood. I think he's probably lost his. Uh, and I always leave it on. Like I never take it off.
So,
Um,
so you got your base design, you got your pattern, right? Which you did with this master tailor. Now how did
we
you find a
had
factory?
we had a custom interior plaid woven for us in North Carolina, so that was pretty
Wow.
special
Hmm.
and pretty fortunate that I found them just from googling. I'm like an internet Wolverine, so I'm just like keep like snarling and clawing until I find what I want to find. Um, so we originally we found a tailor in Philly, and she turned out to be kind of a sham. I think she actually like bilked us out of 3 grand.
Wow. Oh, that's
Uh,
terrible.
yeah, it was kind of like welcome to Philadelphia. Uh, it was a definitely a good intro into garment making. And then she kind of to get out of not making us the coats that she promised, uh, she she decided that she would use our deposit to intro us to a factory in Newark, New Jersey that could actually make it. And so
Hmm.
that's how we found our factory. And that factory was a military spec factory in New Jersey, and they were able to take all of the work that we had done, the patterns, everything, get it production ready, and make us a sample, which we then did a Kickstarter launch.
Wow.
And we did the Kickstarter launch, and you know, we had this expensive trench coat, and I said we need something else. And I really, at the time, I really loathed the idea of making like a logo tee.
Hmm.
I grew up in the '90s. I was a teenager of the '90s, and like everything was logo tees, and I was like, I can't stomach another logo tee.
And I think, and sorry, but I think just for anybody out there who's not familiar with Kickstarter, I think what you're describing is usually if you launch something on Kickstarter, particularly something that's expensive, you have to offer kind of multiple tiers for people to participate in the launch. So you were looking to develop something that was less expensive than the trench coat to give someone a more entry level option, right?
Yeah, like people would, they'd be like, "Oh, for $5, you can get a handwritten note, or
Right.
or some trinket." And we didn't want to offer trinkets or like landfill that you would just throw away. So I emailed and called a bunch of sock mills, and I actually found a sock factory in Philly in our area. Uh, Two brothers that had started it. Their knitting was in Reading, Pennsylvania, and the finishing was in Camden, just across the bridge from us. And then I found another one in North Carolina, and we ended up making like a kind of like a mini sock collection. So we
Ah,
launched and that was like the sort of affordable way to buy into the brand from Kickstarter.
so
And we
that's how this kind of that's how this dual proposition of making trench coats and socks kind of came
yeah,
about
none of
because you needed a low cost, kind of easy way for somebody to support your Kickstarter that wasn't buying a coat.
it's entirely pragmatic. There was no like
Wow.
grand design decision there. Other than that we both like socks, and we just thought that like if you got a good pair of socks as a gift, it would be useful and you wouldn't throw it away.
Yeah. And
Um,
practically no sizing, right? Socks
no,
generally
yeah,
fit
no
everyone.
sizing,
Yeah.
no, like none of those complicated issues.
Yep.
So we did the Kickstarter. We made a hilarious video on my iPhone that looks like an Al Qaeda training video or something. Uh, it's on Kickstarter. You can go look at our archive project,
Oh,
and
okay.
if you
Yeah.
want a
So
good
that's
laugh,
what we. I guess we could always drop the link at the end of this in case anyone wants to see Jacob's Al Qaeda training training video where he pitches socks and trench coats.
uh, and so we did our launch and we met our goal, like just like not that much above it. It's not like we blew out for some huge amount, but we met our goal and we launched. And immediately after launch, there was just a lot of interest from people in the socks,
Hmm.
which is not surprising given that the trench coat, was over $700.
Yeah.
And but people were also buying the trench coats, and the trench coats have had a steady drip ever since then. And I think we've made 7 or 8 production runs of
Wow.
them, uh, maybe more. I don't know. I'd have to like go back and like count invoices, and now this is across 2 different factories. So we made the trench coats a bunch of times and still make them, and we even started iterating into different fabrics and materials. But we launched with the socks, and the socks immediately took off. And I started getting emails about like, well, do you do wholesale? Like, no, we don't wholesale this trench coat. It would be too much money otherwise. But what about the socks? And I was invited by the folks at Liberty Fairs to show our sock collection at one of their trade shows. And I drove up to New York and I showed them everything that we had, and they were like, "Oh, it's good, bring it." And I didn't think that it was good enough. So David and I made like a full summer and fall sock collection in like a month,
Wow.
and we launched that sock collection in to wholesale partners at our very first trade show in New York in the summer of 2014. And our
Wow.
very first wholesale accessories collection came out that fall of 14. And that's kind
Yeah.
of like, I mean, the founding of the brand was in 2010 when we formed an LLC after I came back from vacation that previous summer. The launch of the brand was in January of 2013 Kickstarter, but it wasn't until the fall of 2014 when we really like when it got very, very real, when we had a wholesale collection. I had left my job at that point to really try to grow this. I was working out of my house.
Wow.
Um, Not long after that, I got an office, a 1 room office in Ardmore, which is like one town over. And then in 2016, we moved to our current location, which is also in Ardmore, but we have almost the entire second floor of a building, an old bank building in
Hmm.
downtown Ardmore.
Yeah. Now I've been there. You have beautiful office setup, and you have a lot of space. That's great.
So,
Yeah. And I think, yeah, like I definitely, I personally remember this because it was around probably like 2015, I think, when we started ordering socks from you.
yep,
And they were immediately a hit. I think you zeroed in on a really crucial product. And when I think when a lot of people kind of look at like a online sock vendor, it might not, be immediately apparent how smart of a business this is. But the way that you were doing it, as the owner of, I had multiple boutiques at that time. Buying wholesale socks from you and then offering them in my stores was huge. A lot of times customers come in to visit a store, especially if they've read about it, but they're not ready to buy an expensive shirt or a pair of trousers or shoes. They want to take something with them when they leave the store, and they want to support you in some way. And socks are an absolutely perfect way to do that. And I remember, your socks were really some of the only ones I was stocking. I had a couple other brands, but your socks were the best. And think I had like two Christmas Eves in a row when like just one store was selling like $6,000 worth of your socks at retail in
yeah,
one day. Which
I
like this is
think
this is an enormous number for like a little 800 square foot boutique in Brooklyn, New York.
they
Um,
went they went nuts at Smith Street Holiday.
yeah, and your stuff was great. And then I'm sure from your perspective, as like a direct retailer, like socks are a great product to sell online. They don't really have sizing issues. They don't really bring returns, which are always a big problem for our industry. They're affordable in real terms. Even if you can buy socks for less money, which are cheaper or imported, anyone can afford a pair of your socks if they want to treat themselves to something really high quality and special. Um, yeah, it's such
Yeah,
a smart business.
it definitely the fact that it's a very affordable, very doable price point helps.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's so. kind of going into that because you have a huge assortment and a growing assortment, and I'm subscribed to your newsletter. I see your social media, and every week you're coming out with new merchandise. So like these days, what are some of your best sellers and the things that people really come to you for?
Our single best selling style is the retro stripe sock, which is exactly as it sounds. It's a retro-y looking 80s, 90s. It's not a tube sock. It's a We made it shorter than a tube sock, but the
Right.
original ones that I pulled out of the factory were a tube sock. So the story of the
And
retro socks is actually
well,
pretty interesting.
I know you have an amazing story on that retro stripe sock, and I definitely want to hear that. And I'm always stunned when I see the pictures of it about how current it looks, especially with like kind of like sneaker and shoe trends these days. But outside of the retro stripe socks, like what would be like two or three other things that people really come to you for and are interested in buying?
They're buying the retro socks. I mean, the top SKUs, the top styles are socks. The
Hmm.
retro sock. Um, we introduced solid socks this year, and it's now the second best selling style.
Hmm.
Um, the Kennedy, and that's we call it the solids, but it is the retro sock without a stripe,
Right.
and they're dyed, and I
Hmm.
think the colors help. The colors are just they're really nice and wearable and rich, and sophisticated looking. Um,
Right.
and those are selling really well. Although the number one selling color of that is natural, which isn't even,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
which is not.
People
I can't claim, like, oh, we made this amazing color natural.
People
Uh,
people like the classic hits. Well, I do know that we had kind of tentatively scheduled up this podcast to be recorded yesterday, but you ended up canceling the morning of because you told me you guys were so busy shipping all of your orders from the weekend. And that's driven a lot by this new collection that you created, right?
we created a new collection called Original Equipment, which
Hmm.
has a whole long story to it, and but it was uh, the original equipment is like classic American sportswear, and there's mesh shorts. So mesh shorts are our current best selling non sock. So
Got it.
after you get through the like three different sock styles, the first non sock on our list, like call it number 4 right now currently, is the mesh shorts, and they're selling really really well, and they're priced really really well. They're not like it's not $150 for mesh shorts,
Right.
and they're really nice, and it's this sub brand called Original Equipment, which is uh, which was the name of the brand that Barry Schwartz started before he started Camber. Camber
Hmm.
Sportswear has a factory on the Schuylkill River in Philly, and he makes these like crazy heavy sweatshirts and sweatpants and other like knits. It's like true American workwear. And I was asking him about the origins of his company, and he said that before he moved to his current building, he had this other brand called OE, which stood for Original Equipment. And I was like, wow, that's an amazing name. I was like, would you mind if I like almost like relaunched a brand, you know, in homage to this called Original Equipment? And he was like, sure.
I mean
uh,
that's generous.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's
it's great.
towards the end of his career, and he had no, he wasn't looking to monetize something that he did back in the 80s.
Right.
And it was very generous, and I thank him for that. But we launched it, and we launched it with some the mesh shorts and some French Terry sweat
Hmm.
shorts, and a like a short sleeve French Terry top. So almost like that the sheriff on Jaws wore this,
Right.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like
Yep.
that classic, you
Hmm.
know I guess like almost like gym shirt, like French Terry
Yeah.
gym shirty kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then we have a whole next set of stuff for the fall, including the sort of the Grail camber sweatshirt that we've spent 2 years working on. The pandemic
Wow.
caused
Okay.
the delay. We endeavored to take Barry's pattern for his. Barry's got this, you know, now it's kind of got all this fame behind it because it was written about in the Wall Street Journal and other places. But he's got this cross knit sweatshirt, which is the champion reverse weave. But if you say champion reverse weave around him, he looks at you like you said a dirty word. But he we took his cross weave uh, or his cross knit hoodie, and we just slimmed. We took a bunch of the fabric off of the underarm. We just modernized the pattern, and it wasn't easy, and there was a fair bit of shrinkage in the fabric, and uh, it took many samples. It was a whole thing,
Yeah.
but we finally did it, and we actually took delivery on it, and we have it, and we're going to launch it pre-fall. And it's crazy heavy. It's like 2.5 pounds per sweatshirt.
Oh, but
And
you
this
have
like
it now.
it's like this monster fleece that um, I've never seen a heavier sweatshirt from anyone else.
Okay, so if anybody's listening to this and they want to get a heavy, like the world's heaviest sweatshirt ahead of time, can they email you for early access?
I guess we gotta launch the. We haven't even shot it on a model. We got a little bit of work to do, but
All right, it
uh,
could just be a surprise.
pre
Okay.
fall, what we
Okay.
have
Okay.
what we have right now from original equipment are the mesh shorts, and that's
Yeah.
very seasonally appropriate.
And when you're
Uh,
saying mesh shorts, you mean that classic lightweight basketball short
Classic
with all
lightweight
like polyester.
basketball, lacrosse.
Yeah.
Those are made in Philly at a factory that's at Fourth and like Spring Garden that's been
How
there
cool.
for a hot minute, which is crazy that it's still there.
Yeah.
Um, and that's cool. And the Terry stuff is made in Detroit, so we got some gritty cities going on.
Yeah.
And the hat. So we made a logo hat, which is not at all like me. Like I normally we normally don't do anything logoed, but we decided that original equipment was like, a logo can we can rock a logo with original equipment. We made some logo hats in Queens
Hmm.
in and they look great, and it's a small collection right now, but it's working. It's awesome. I love it. And
Yeah. I think
customers are thrilled
what's
too.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. I think what's so cool, like looking at it, kind of like as a third party, I feel like a lot of brands like they start with a heavy like ideological design idea. They got a concept, they're making a collection, and then they're like building all of that stuff out. They've got this kind of idea of what they're producing, and then they get it made. And I think that you're going about it in a really interesting way. I mean, you're super committed to domestic manufacturing. And as we said before, like unlike a lot of other countries where it is honestly a lot easier to make a wide variety of things, here in the United States, our factory manufacturing capability has been decimated from where it was in the 90s. So you have individual factories throughout the country which are individually specialized in one thing. And I think it's so cool that you're going out and finding these spots, ordering the merchandise that they already make really well, and then kind of weaving that into a collection of greatest hits, if you will, of the factories that you're working with. I can't think of anybody else who's doing anything like that.
I think you made a really, really important point. And for anyone out there looking to start a clothing brand or accessories or anything in the fashion game, I can't stress this enough. And I was told this by uh, one of our early technical design consultants. Her name is Katia. She's a professor now of fashion at University of Delaware, and she worked with me back in the early launch of the brand and helped like get the trench coat pattern all like production ready, and she did a lot of amazing technical work for us, but also was like, really brilliant with branding and other things. But she said to me, You know, factories are like pies.
Mm.
You don't go to the berry pie factory and ask for a cream pie. They're going to screw it up. And you don't go to the cream pie factory and ask for a berry pie. It's going to taste like a weird cream berry pie and you're going to hate it. And
Hmm.
I have no idea why she chose pies to this day.
Interesting analogy.
It's totally baffling, but it stuck with me. Uh, and she's 100% correct. You got to figure out what a factory does, and you got to go with that thing.
Yeah.
Like you can't pick you can't go to a factory and say I want you to make me uh, a button down woven shirt, and all they do like is make sweatshirts, knits. They're not going to have the right machinery. They're not going to have the right know how. They're not going to know you know all the little like techniques, the sewing techniques, or have access to the trims. It's just going to be all off.
I mean, you can, and people do. You see a lot of that in women's wear, but you do, as you said, you sacrifice a lot of quality and a lot of know-how. You know, here in LA and even in the New York City garment district, kind of in my early days of producing things, I used sewing contractors. The very first product that I made was a slim fit woven shirt, a little bit like Band of Outsiders style, because that was the look of that time in like 2009. And we went to a sewing contractor, so a place in the New York City garment district with maybe about 50 operators, and they could make anything. They could make a shirt, they could make a jean, they could make a dress. They could work with like rigid woven fabrics. They could work with knit fabrics. They could work with silk. They did everything, but they didn't do anything particularly well. And our shirts were fine, but when we changed our production and we began making our shirts at the New England Shirt Factory in Massachusetts, which only made shirts, the quality just went through the roof. Pricing was about the same, but they specialized in shirts. You have operators and artisans who only do these procedures all the time and are great at it. So I do think, yeah, as you said, it's very shrewd that you're kind of going out there and you've got these shirts from Detroit and then these shorts from Philadelphia. You're doing hats at a hat factory. You do socks at a sock factory here
The
in.
Philly factory, they specialize in, believe it or not, referee uniforms. So
Yeah.
they make like all of the domestic made referee uniforms in the country are probably made there.
Wow, how
So
cool.
like mesh shorts is not a big thing for them. That's like part
Yeah.
of the referee uniform.
Yeah, and they got the materials. They got people who sew that particular fabric all day long, and they're aware of the eccentricities of it, and they can do it well. And yeah, I think that's
Yeah, like
really that's really a smart choice.
I mean sweatshirts and hoodies. Obviously, LA is really set up for that.
So I wanted to
For
get to I wanted to get to like kind of like a fun part, because I feel like for all these interviews, like little stories are always the best thing, and it's equally entertaining to hear about things that are successful and things that are like a total failure. Because any of us in retail, we all have had the experience of coming up with an idea and thinking, "Man, this is going to be amazing. We can't wait to drop this," and then it just completely bombs, and you even did your work ahead of time and you did your research, and no matter what, customers are just not buying it. I know I have a lot of these stories myself. So how about we talk first about three decisions that worked really well for you, and then let's go into three decisions that really didn't work out at all. I know
all
that you
right,
and I share one of the stories that didn't work out.
we
So
we
just
do
like
we do
just
share
just like
one.
real quickly, what are like three kind of products that you three products or initiatives that you just kind of did and thought, maybe this will work, but then it just exploded and became one of the bedrocks of your business?
Um, okay, the first I'm gonna say something for things that went right.
Yes, three things that went right.
Moving my collection more casual over the years is something that went right.
Yeah.
The brand started with a trench coat. It was during the hashtag menswear era. The trench coat itself, I actually think is perfect. I don't think there's any problem with the style, and we don't intend to change it. It's kind of right where it needs to be. It's not too formal and not too casual. But we
Hmm.
started moving everything else more casual. Like we got away from making dress socks, for example. I think out of all of the socks that we make, there's only two styles that are like even remotely close to being dress socks. And we're not ordering those two styles in any kind of extreme quantities. I think at
Right.
this point people are buying them for like weddings or events. They're not even buying them for work.
Hmm.
So the more casual we went with everything, with apparel, with socks and accessories, kind of the more sales we made. So
Got
going
it.
casual was key. And I was coming from a business casual, like dress up, dress down environment. So
Yeah.
it took me a while to get there. Like I wasn't ready. I was in the mindset of like, well, no, we need to make clothes that work in the office and going out. And but the entire industry was moving more casual, and people were buying more casual. And for whatever reason, our customer wanted to buy stuff that was more casual from us. So the more we made that kind of clothing, the better it did. So that
Interesting.
was that was a good decision.
Okay. So
Another
that
good
was one.
decision was sort of retro styles. The Kennedy sock. I saw a photo of JFK wearing this sock. He was sitting on a boat watching America's Cup in 1962. The photo was from a like an email from GQ,
Hmm.
and I went to the factory in New Jersey and I told the owner, I was like, "We're gonna make Kennedy sock," and he was like, "Huh?" And I showed him a picture, and he's like, "All right." And we made Kennedy sock, and it's been a hit ever since. And it's a freaking comfortable sock as
Yeah.
well. And then
So
the
cool.
retro sock followed that. And the retro sock was a tube sock that I pulled out of a cardboard box in the back of a factory in North Carolina. I
Yeah.
went there in 2014. I pulled these like five retro socks out of a cardboard box. I looked at them. I said, "That's interesting." And I put them back down. And then I
Right.
went back there 4 years later and I pulled them out of the same box in the same spot. And I looked at the owner and I said, "Okay, we're going to make these now."
That's great.
And
It's
and then
serendipitous.
and then we made them, and it's our best selling style by far. Nothing else is even close.
That's amazing.
And then the OE collection, this like sportswear collection that we launched recently, that's been a real hit. It's been well received. I like I like the specialized branding on it, and uh, that's a decision that worked well to make a sub brand. I don't think making a sub brand always works well. I think it can
Yeah.
be distracting. It could be, a big like suck of resources. But in this case, it worked out.
Hmm. Totally agree. All right. So now the fun part. What are three things that really bombed? Because people
All right.
people out there have to realize this. They have to, it's like I think so many people want to, they're interested in being a designer. They want to be an entrepreneur. They got to be conscious that it carries its fair share of disappointments.
It does. There's such high highs and low lows.
Yeah,
Like the
true.
agony and the ecstasy. Like you release something and it sells really well, and you get this like amazing like kind of high from it, and then you have other days where like you couldn't give the product away and you feel awful.
Yeah.
I think I was super ignorant about commercial real estate. I did not
Hmm.
understand it. Um, I mean, this is more of like a what went wrong kind of thing. The very first lease I signed for the one bedroom, the one room office was fine, but the next lease, like I specifically didn't use a commercial broker because I thought that not having a broker would make me like more attractive to the landlord because they wouldn't have to pay a fee.
Right.
But that just made me more susceptible to signing a lease that, wasn't remotely in my favor, which is
Yeah.
exactly what I did, which
Hmm.
had like no outs or no ways to exit. And now we're like completely and utterly, jam packed. We've got inventory like up to the ceiling in every room, and I have no recourse. Like I, I can't, I can't get out of it because I didn't understand the contract that I was signing because I was just super ignorant in this area. And it's when you're starting your own business, it's hard. You have to know about everything and you don't know about anything. And
Yeah.
so you have to learn as much as you can in every area. And there's just some areas where you're not going to know what the hell you're doing. Uh, and commercial real estate has been, a big learning point for me. So, we're working on a new space and now I'm being, ultra careful. I have a broker, I have a lawyer. I might
Yeah.
hire another lawyer. I'm not going to hire a second lawyer, but uh, I want to be, eyes wide open this time. So that was something that went a little sideways. I
Yeah,
think
I
another
would
thing.
I would echo that. Because I actually I had this similar situation happen, and I even took the precaution of getting a lawyer. I think it's not only important to have a lawyer, but it's really like before you sign that lease, like commercial leases, even, especially stores, but even offices, which generally they're less restrictive. Like you've got to pull that thing apart and spend your personal time with it. Because my example, I had a storefront in Manhattan, and I didn't use a broker. They had a sign up, and I contacted the landlord, kind of like just exactly what you did, thinking that the fact that he didn't have to pay a broker would make us more attractive. But I did have a lawyer, and he had a lawyer too. I think in New York City, this is especially like par for the course that before any like big lease signing, you just have lawyers involved. And our lawyer was nice, but it's like he gave me kind of I think, like a $2,000 charge. Like that was a flat fee to evaluate the lease. And after I paid that, he wasn't that proactive in really explaining things to me. And the one mistake that I made was something about the tax increase, property tax increase. So the building, and I won't go on too long of a tangent with this, but the building that we rented in had our storefront and had a pizza place. And every year, this New York City building would get a tax increase in property tax from New York City. And I would have to pay half, and the pizza place would have to pay half. Well, the first year, it was a small increase. So our extra bill was like $300 a piece. But by year 7, like I think I got hit with a bill for like $29,000. That was in
Yeah.
addition to the monthly rent that I was paying. And even though this was in there and I talked to a lawyer about it and I hired a lawyer, I mean, he never really took the time to break down how those numbers would work or what my potential exposure would be over the long term for a 10-year lease. And I had no option but to pay it. And, my store, like all of the kind of New York City boutique business was declining already in the kind of late, 2010s. And no matter what, I had to still keep coughing up ever increasing sums of money just to keep that space, because I didn't sit down with the lease and read it myself and dissect everything myself, and I just trusted in this, kind of lawyer that I had retained. So, yeah, do your
Yeah,
own research as well. Don't do your
and
own
it's
research with medical stuff, but do your own research when you're signing a commercial lease.
and it's hard, there's just no way to know everything. But
Yeah.
hopefully, if you're listening to this and you're looking, you've never signed a lease before, then like
Mhm.
don't make our mistakes.
Yep.
You know, like
Yeah, don't rush into it and take your time and make sure you understand everything, and then like talk to the landlord and say, "What does this mean exactly? What are you looking for? Oh, there's taxes. How can we project this out? What is this going to look like in estimated dollar terms over the course of the lease? I want to see a statement."
yeah,
Yeah.
questions are free. You ask,
Yeah.
ask away.
Good
Um,
advice for sure.
I think in terms of apparel or in terms of production,
Mhm.
not doing enough sampling has always been, a pain point for me. And it's
Mm.
hard. Like we've been a bootstrap business for since we started. We have one angel investor, and in the especially in earlier years, just being constantly undercapitalized and just trying to you know get through to the next month. And the last thing you want to do is spend another $500 to make an additional outerwear sample on a bunch of changes that you wanted to make from the first sample. You're like, no, we'll just roll those changes into production. And it never works out well. Like maybe you can get away with it, but for every time that you get away with it, there's going to be 4 times when the production comes back not being how you would have liked.
Yeah.
And my advice is just do more sampling than you would like. or maybe even make fewer things. Like I wish I could go back and tell myself like, no, just like perfect the things that you already made, and don't try to move on to the next thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's hard. That's, it's hard to have that discipline, and you kind of learn it by getting burnt. And I've
Yeah.
had that.
That's valuable, and that's a thing that happens with every company. And I think that a lot of times people, because clothing design, is it's kind of subjective. It's not really set to any rules. It's up to interpretation. A lot of people, when they try on a garment that they purchase somewhere and it fits weird, they assume that this is intentional. If they go buy like a certain sport coat from Ralph Lauren, and this particular sport coat has unbelievably high armholes and really skinny sleeves, and it's extremely tight on your arms, more so than any other sport coat from the same brand, they'll in their mind think like, oh, okay, well, some designer thought this was cool. They wanted to make a skinny sleeve sport coat. This is the vibe. And chances are it's not the vibe. It's not the vibe. It's just something went wrong with either the pattern maker
where,
or the
where
production,
you can't
and they
raise
got
your
them
arms
in.
up.
Yeah, and someone realized, oh, this jacket's screwed up. But it's too late to send it back. We got
It's
orders.
the
Put it in the shops. Hopefully, it
it's the
works.
straight
Like,
jacket sport coat.
yeah, like this is insanely like widespread. A lot of yeah. Yeah. So yeah, sampling and yeah, I mean I have similar things here. It's always a moving target. Especially when you're dealing with clothing that has to be garment dyed, which will, experience shrinkage. And our way to kind of get around that is I do tend to always like produce kind of the same shapes in different fabrics. So we have a lot of consistency there because our collection itself is kind of small in designs. We're only making a couple different jackets and a couple different pants, which does keep it consistent. But if you're really out there trying to, constantly design brand new shapes, bring out radically new things season by season, that's great advice. Yeah, be prepared to invest a lot in sampling and take your time with it.
I think, the last what went wrong would be something you and I shared,
I love this story.
which was the ECOT disaster of, what was that, 2019, I think.
I think it was 20. Yeah, I think it was 20. Yeah, maybe let's say it was 2019. That sounds right.
It was either 2018 or 2019,
Yeah, one
but
of those two summers.
ECOT was a big trend, and uh, I don't know. I guess somehow we thought that we would make like we made like a collab uh, ECOT suit. We
Yeah, so
made
from our side, yeah, you sourced the fabric. You met a fabric dealer from India, and India
Yes.
is India is a wonderful like origin spot for like all of these beautiful hand woven, stamped, and hand dyed fabrics. They have incredible levels of kind of artisan cloth. And you found a dealer, and then you had sent me a bunch of fabrics, these beautiful, like really bold, kind of chevron patterns, multicolored, in a really nice gauzy cloth, which was kind of expensive, but we could work with it. And you and I cooked up the idea to do a collaborative jacket and pant.
And yeah, and this goes back to my previous thing about sampling. We didn't sample it. Like
Yes, we
we
didn't.
just we just bought production fabric and went right into it instead of sampling it, and it was a big loud mess.
Well, it was like fascinating because I was on board with you. I definitely I we got the like, and so the I think we each had our own color, right? Was that how it worked?
I don't
Yeah,
remember. I
yeah.
think I've tried to I think I've tried to purposely unremember it, but
We've both been working through this in therapy. But well, I know my color. My color was this like kind of base royal blue, and then it had these really bright like white and red lines, or maybe
no,
white
I,
and
I had
orange.
that too. We
Yeah.
both shared that pain.
Okay. All right. So we did. Oh, because we made shirts too. Yeah. So we did shirts as well. And I actually did I did a photo shoot. We had a model out in Hermosa Beach, really good looking, very cool guy who was my model for years. And I put him in this ECOT shirt and then this matching ECOT jacket and pant. And it was like the loudest outfit that any human being has ever worn. And I took pictures. I did the photos myself. And I remember thinking, I'm like, this is going to kill it. Wow. I wonder if we're even going to have any left after the weekend. And we had plenty left
Crickets.
after the weekend. Like it launched. No one bought a single unit.
I think like we shot it on Hamid Halaman, who was
Yeah.
sublet subleasing space for me. He's a Philly guy, self-taught, makes, beautiful bags and
Mhm.
makes custom clothes. And we threw the stuff on him, and he's really cool looking. And
Yeah.
that even Hamid couldn't make anyone buy it. Uh, and Hamid tried to even sell it to his customers, and he makes some wild clothes, and they wouldn't buy it. it was it,
It was very humbling, and it's really like, yeah, sometimes the best laid plans, because as you said, like, ECOT was a definite trend even then, and you saw it in a lot of, a lot of kind of other brands which are in our sphere. You saw them making ECOT clothes, successfully selling ECOT clothes, customers interested in it. We used proven shapes. We made them in our in-house Doyle jacket, our Rivicino, like our best-selling jacket, our best-selling pant. Like these shapes are easy, they fit guys. We sell thousands of them, in all sorts of fabrics on a normal year. We made a basic button-down shirt. I feel like the pricing was pretty fair. Um, but yeah, it just totally bombed.
yeah, the fabric was just it wasn't right. It was too there was too much contrast to it. It was too nuts for maybe our customers, and just the 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 silhouettes it was presented in. I don't
I
think it
think
was
that
I don't think it was wrong to necessarily want to chase into ECOT. We just didn't do it the right way. And I think there's a lot of, you know, thing there's a lot of like designy talk about like, well, I don't follow trends. And I like everyone's influenced by trends, whether it's macro or micro.
yes.
Um, and to say that you're not is to me is a little ridiculous. I mean, there are some very very disciplined designers out there who have their own vision. Rick Owens is going to do Rick Owens.
Mhm.
Uh, and there's other designers out there, and they're and if you're a hyper disciplined designer, rock on. But definitely trend has a place in my business. I think we just try not to swing too far one way or the other. If there's a certain interesting trend going on, then we try to figure out how we might be able to incorporate it. And sometimes these trends are cool and fun. There's a trend right now for matching shorts and like casual like camp shirts.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we have one for this spring in a floral fabric, and I love it.
Yeah.
uh,
It looks
I
great.
think I think it looks really cool. And so like I'm kind of happy to be part of that quote trend.
Right.
And
And that's
but you can
working. Unlike ECOT, you're selling that.
that is selling, and they're
Okay.
selling as separates. Like
Yeah.
both pieces look completely and totally normal if you're just buy the floral shorts, if you just buy the floral camp shirt. But if you
Right.
buy them as a set, and we photographed it uh, both ways. We
Hmm.
photographed it as a set, and we photographed it separate, and it
Yeah.
looks cool in all settings. I think the problem with the stuff you and I made was that it didn't look cool in any setting.
I mean, I'm respectfully going to disagree with that. I think it did. I think it. I use this example a lot when people kind of ask me these questions. That like just because something is right in the market and something has a customer, even if it has like a really like rabid interested customer, doesn't mean that you can sell it.
Right, right.
And like I think like it looked cool. The photos of this thing looked cool. It's definitely super loud, but I think there are some brands in our sphere that could have taken that exact product, um, that exact model, that exact photo shoot, and been like so successful with it that they sold out in a day.
The button down shirt had multicolored wavy stripes,
Yeah.
and that was really cool. I remember that. And
And even that didn't even work for me, and that's weird because I do often sell like kind of like louder and bolder shirts, but like when people ask me about it, a big part of my business is selling. I sell tuxedos, I sell custom suits, I sell like really high end custom dress shirts. So the same brand that could sell an ECOT suit really well and blow it out in 12 hours, which was about 500,000 hours less than it took me to clear the stuff out. Also probably also probably can't sell, like a $500 like Super 300s custom dress shirt. That's not their customer. And yeah, I think, like, to your point, like, you do have to go after trends. I think there's a difference between, like, someone who's like a pure designer with just a very singular viewpoint, like Rick Owens or maybe like a Tom Brown, and someone like us who's, we're more merchants. We are doing design and we are coming up with concepts, but we're also kind of responsive to what our customers are looking for. And
Yeah, it's a
you're
mix of merchandising and design for sure.
yeah, like you're identifying needs, just like I identify needs. Like, I think, your top selling things, if you're moving a bunch of mesh shorts, it's like, you don't have some kind of like Rick Owens level of intellectual capital in the mesh short. You saw, I imagine, that, customers were interested in mesh shorts. It was kind of ascending as a more popular shape. It is a little bit like ubiquitous. I mean, you can get them super inexpensively from some kind of imported company, but you found a place that could make a really good mesh short. You modify the fit so that it looks more modern. You have your color selection, and this is where you're finding success.
Yeah, brands evolve over time. It's
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about when you launch a brand. What are you going to be known for 5 years later? What are
Hmm.
you going to be known for 5 years after that? I mean,
Yeah.
we launched as a brand that was singularly focused on making a trench coat that happened to have some socks. Now, 50% of our business is socks,
Yeah.
but we're trying to also be known for other things, like mesh shorts, like underwear. We just like had a big project in the last year to develop an underwear in Los Angeles that's made in Los Angeles from start to finish. The the fabric is knit in Los Angeles. The waistband is knit in Los Angeles. It's cut and sewn there. So like it you get known for things, and then you kind of like also spend time trying to get known for things,
Yeah. How
and
cool.
it's hard to like know how that's necessarily going to shake out. It's it's not really a linear process.
Yeah. And I guess that anyone coming into this business has to be comfortable with the idea of making mistakes. Don't go all into things all the time. I mean, I have plenty of stories of things which on paper sounded like great ideas and in reality just completely bombed, even though they should have worked.
But
So it's
you've been good at pivoting too. Like you were a pure merchant for a while. Then
yeah.
you started making that like Band of Outsiders type shirt. Then you
Hmm.
started making a couple more things, then a couple more things,
Yeah.
and then you transitioned to having like in almost an entire everything that you make now is under the Epaulet label.
Hmm. Yeah. And
So
you need to be responsive to it, from my business. So, almost 50% of our sales are bespoke tailored clothing from Hickey Freeman, whether it's suits, custom pants, custom sport coats. It's a huge, huge part of what we do. And that all started because, before we worked with Hickey Freeman, we worked with Southwick, and the Southwick sales guy called me up out of the blue and said that, they had sold some Hopsack sport coats to Nepenthez, the storefront in New York City, that's owned by the team from Engineered Garments. And they sold some Hopsack sport coats and people were buying it. And at the time, I was like, oh, I don't know, we don't really do sport coats. It sounds a little formal for a store. They're kind of expensive. Like, at the time, I would do more like casual jackets, from third party brands. And I brought in the sport coats, and people responded to it, and it's been building and growing. And it took that kind of open mindedness for me, and then also getting that incremental bit of success and saying, oh wow, these worked. Well, let me order a couple different sport coats. Well, now people are asking, can they get a custom sport coat? So let's create a made to order program. And
that's
that's
very that's it's organic. Like yeah,
yeah,
sometimes things like that just happen, and
yeah.
um it's hard to like you know figure out what's signal and what's noise, but I think there are those moments when you're like, okay, I need to do this. I felt
Yeah.
that way about the original equipment thing. Like we knew we wanted to make this like crazy heavy hoodie at
Mm,
Barry's factory because like I had never seen a hoodie like this anywhere
yeah.
else. And then when he told the story of the original name of his company or of his brand, I was like, this is it. Like
Right.
this is its own thing. Like we're gonna turn this into its own thing. That was a moment of clarity.
Yeah. Well, let me well, I mean, this has been amazing. So how about we just like wrap it up with and it's okay it's okay if you don't have an exact answer to it. You know, we just went through quite a few years of total uncertainty about everything in life. Um where would you see American Trench being 5 years from now? Kind of in a perfect world for you.
I think in 5 years, continue to organically grow. I mean, I'm trying to. We're completely out of space, so I'm working on a new space that would also have a retail store.
Mhm.
So start have a physical footprint. Maybe in 5 years we have several retail stores, and we continue to grow our e-com business. We continue to work with wholesale partners. Continue to scale up. Some of that depends on the factories we work with. We have a lot of factory partners that are aging out.
Right.
Um, so we're either gonna have to find new factories, or I don't know. There could be 5 years from now, there could be an opportunity for us to vertically integrate, and maybe uh, buy one of the factories that we work with, or arrange financing and investment to take control of one of those factories.
Right.
So it's really hard to say, but I mean, definitely we want to get bigger. We want to be here in 5 years. That's number one
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
And be profitable and functional, and not struggling to struggling to feed ourselves.
Right.
But I think, and that was definitely the first 5 years of my business. It was not easy.
Mm,
Um, but I definitely there's a chance. There's not a chance. There's an intention to start to really grow and scale and bring some additional resources and vision and focus. And I
mhm.
think the focus happens when you bring in additional resources, whether that's capital or people, so that it gives you the time to stop being in the weeds. Like I
Right.
know that's a goal for me, is to like stop being involved in like every little day-to-day operations decision,
Mhm.
to have a big enough organization where there's like a management layer, not a crazy big management layer, but there's enough of a management layer that the different arms of the organization can run and function without me personally having to like oversee every little bit of it.
Right.
And that's a way then that we can grow the grow and scale the brand by providing the like mental space to think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that's such a challenge for any entrepreneur. It's like, you start off like kind of like owner operator. And then yeah, to get like you in order to grow to a really like sustainable space, you as the founder, you need to have the space to kind of do the higher level work. And you're right, you have to get out of the constant grind of day to day and minutia. And that's not just our industry. Like I know people have gone on to like start their own law practice, their own medical practice, kind of this entrepreneurial professional services, and they face the same issues. They're
It's
trying
really
to
hard. It's
yeah.
like right now I can't do it during the day. Like
Mhm.
I can do that thinking work either at night after I put my kids to bed, which I'm
Yeah.
tired, or sometime in the morning between when I get my kids off to school on the bus and in between when I actually physically come into work. So there might be
Mhm.
like a 1 to 2 hour window where like, you know, I can sit and think without someone asking me a question, or, you know, uh, or like some, urgent email or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. All right. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for all your time.
Thanks for having me. It's been
Any
fun.
any parting comments to the community over at styleforum.net? I know you have your affiliate thread going for the first time, and
Yeah,
you've been active on there each day.
I mean, I've been a Styleforum member for a long time. Like, I think you were the one actually that encouraged me to open a Styleforum account.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
When I came to your store, you talked about Styleforum, and I went home and started my account. And that
Hmm.
was a long time ago, over 10 years ago. And I never started an affiliate thread, and I think I for a while I was just like, well, I want the brand to be bigger, or I want to like, you know, not have my offering only trench coats and socks. Um, and it was fine. It was finally time to start it, and I'm really happy that I have, and the response has been great. And I'm really excited to share a whole bunch of content that isn't easily shareable any other way. Like we do all these like really fun factory visits, and we try to share them on emails and Instagram. But actually, I really think that the style form thread format is one of the best ways for us to share some of these really cool factory experiences. Like we just shared one about going to MTL Weavers in Scranton, and that's on the thread. So take a look. And I'm headed to North Carolina at the end of this month, so there'll be something about that. And like I think there's just this amazing opportunity to share, some of the behind the scenes of like sample, like when samples come in or uh, just all this interesting stuff. And so I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think Styleforum is it's the best venue for those kind of like long form posts and for conversation, and then also for anybody using it who might be listening to this. It's also all those threads, but particularly like Jacob's thread, my thread. It's run by the people in charge of the brands themselves, and you can post and ask us questions directly. If you really want to pick Jacob's brain about something, you can feel free to post on his thread and ask him a question. It doesn't just have to be about him pitching products to you and,
Yeah,
talk
yeah. You
about new stuff that's in
ask
development.
ask away.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. It's
cool.
always really good. And it's, yeah, impossible to do that on like the Instagrams of the world. So it's a great, great venue for it.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, Jacob. And we'll see you on the site.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Okay. Bye bye.